Hey guys, we're going to do multiple VLANs using IPv6 today. So previous videos I've done on IPv6, we've just used a single LAN subnet, but we're going to introduce some additional networks and they're going to be transported to our clients via VLANs. So I've done a video which you can check out here on InterVLAN routing. Now the actual VLAN layer 2 aspect, even the layer 3 aspect, still applies. Check that out for some more detail on actual how to do VLANing in the MikroTik. Difference is, instead of applying IPv4 addresses to our networks, we're going to apply both IPv4 and IPv6. So another video worth checking out is where I do dual stacking. So that's where we get IPv4 and IPv6 on each of the LAN networks. So they can basically, the client can then use primarily IPv6, but when that's not available, then it can use IPv4. So very basic setup. I've just got the three networks here, and I'm going to use one machine which is directly connected into a port on the MikroTik. That's going to be on VLAN 10, and then I have a switch which is just a Cisco switch. Here we have a trunk which is going to have VLANs 20 and 30, and then each one of these will be an access port on 20 and 30. And then what we'll do is we'll have on the VLAN layer 3 interface on the MikroTik, we'll have an IPv6 subnet in each and an IPv4. We'll do DHCP for the IPv4, and we'll do the SLAAC, basically the stateless address configuration for the IPv6. So we don't use DHCP for IPv6. It's a different way of doing it, which I've outlined in those other videos, but we'll go through almost a complete setup again here. The only difference is I won't look at the NBN WAN side for both IPv4 and IPv6 because that's covered off in other videos. But yeah, let's get going. So here we go. So we've got the same router as I was using before, same setup. I've got an IPv4 WAN IP address and an IPv6. The IPv6 is a prefix which I'm getting dynamically via the DHCP v6 client. Check out those other videos I've got on IPv6 on how to go into more detail there on this. I'll kind of leave that out of this one. And then my LAN is just a bridge at the moment, and I have IP addresses for that LAN. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those first and foremost. So addresses, so there's already gone off the IPv6 ones, the IPv4 ones. Addresses. Let's go ahead and remove LAN bridge IP. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create some VLANs. So before we create the VLANs on the bridge interface, we're going to actually add some IP VLANs, so some layer 3 VLANs. So for this we do under interfaces, add a new VLAN. And we're going to do VLAN 10 as I mentioned, which we'll just call VLAN 10. That's going to be VLAN ID 10, and then we're going to attach it to the bridge. Now I've done other videos on VLANings. It was VLAN for IPv4 at the time, but the process and the procedure is exactly the same. It depends on which IP addresses you use on the actual interface. Can be for both, as we did with the LAN bridge on my previous video. So then we go one more. I'm going to add VLAN 30, and again on the bridge. So now you can see under interface list, the LAN bridge has these 3 VLANs assigned to it. And now that as I've been adding those, you'll probably see in here as well, dynamically added my link local for each of these VLANs. So these are now a layer 3 interface. So onto the bridging. So VLANs over here. Let's add our VLANs. So bridge, LAN bridge, because we've only got the one. We're going to add VLANs 10 to this one. We're going to have a separate one for 10 and a combined one for 20 and 30 because they're going to be trunked. 10 is going to be locally on my connected for the machine that I'm on. So we want to tag it on the LAN bridge, always tag it on the bridge, and then untag we're going to be on Ether 2, which is what my machine is connected to. Okay, you'll see nothing here current tagged or untagged because what I haven't done is enabled the VLAN filtering yet, but we'll do that afterwards. Now we can go ahead and add for VLAN 20 and VLAN 30, just add extra ones with these drop downs and remove them. You can see. Now this is going to be tagged on Ether 3, which is the one that's connected to my switch. Okay, and then we're not going to have any untagged for these ones. We just need to remember to always add the bridge as a tagged interface. Okay, now what we're going to do is under our ports, we're going to specify, because this one's going to be untagged, it's going to be an access port. We need to set the port VLAN ID, which was 10, and we can leave it as admit all. 3 is our trunk port, so what I'm going to do, instead of specifying a port VLAN ID, should never use 1. So if this was going to be my native VLAN, I would change it to, and it wasn't actually going to be in use, I'd change it to something random, but the best thing to do is admit tagged only. So that makes it basically a trunk interface. And 4 is unused, so I'm going to take 4 out for now. Keep things simple. Okay. Now we can go ahead and enable our VLAN filtering. So we tick VLAN filtering. We're going to admit tagged only on the bridge itself, because if you remember, I added my bridge as tagged interfaces. Okay, and then we enable that, and now it's going to tell us what's currently tagged and what's currently untagged. If you start to get some dynamic ones in here, which will show up as port VLAN ID, then that means you've got a port assigned that is not within here, and it's basically not being selected as an untagged port, and you've not specified the new private port VLAN ID. But basically, if you've done everything correctly on this side of it, so set these up properly. So if it's untagged or access port, you want to make sure you've set the right VLAN on there. And if it's going to be a trunk port and you're not using the native VLAN, so you're not going to have an untagged VLAN as well as tagged VLANs, just change that to be admit only tagged VLANs. And remember, never use 1. 1 is not going to be in use, which is why I'm not changing that. Okay. So now what we can do, now we've got the VLANing set up and we've got the interfaces ready, we can assign some IP addresses. So we'll start with the IPv4 side. And then we're going to add 10, 0, 10 first of all, 1/24. We're going to put that on VLAN 10. And we're going to add 10, 0, 20/1/24. And that's going to be our VLAN 20. And then let's add our last one, 10, 0, 30, 1/24. And that's going on to VLAN 30. Okay, that's all done. We will add some DHCP for our IPv4 using this DHCP setup. And this is where it differs from the IPv6, which you'll see in a minute if you haven't already seen my other videos. Just skip through all this because it's fine, because we're only testing. Just speed through that bit. any of this stuff unclear, then please check out some of my setup videos for which are all in. I don't specify that they're IPv4, but they are all for IPv4 setup. So I go through the setting up the DHCP servers and the rest of your LAN, WAN, and everything else, if you're unfamiliar. So that's that one done. We can now go ahead and do the same. We'll set up our IPv6 side now. So under address list, I'm going to manually specify my subnets here. You can do it using the pool option, but yeah, I'll do it using the manual option because it can sort of give a bit more of an explanation as to what I'm doing. So let's just do IPv6, sorry, calculator. This is one I've used previously. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our subnet that we've acquired here. I say subnet on prefix. This one here, our /48, which we're getting from our ISP. We can put that in here, and we're going to subnet it into /64s, and we're going to use, as you notice, this is hexadecimal. So if you're unfamiliar, it goes 1 to 9, and then 10 is effectively A, 11 is B, so on until you get to F, and then it goes 10. So that's not actually 10, but for our purposes, I'm going to use 10 because when you're looking at it, it looks like it's just an easier way to view what VLAN, so you can tie the VLAN ID within the IP address. So now we've got a /64, which is inside this /48. So that 48 is being advertised to us from our ISP, same as if you were to get a range routed to you from your ISP. So your ISP may give you a single /30, so you have one of the IP addresses is on your ISP's network, the other's on yours. And then if you buy any more additional IPv4 public addresses, they can often give that to you as a range. So they will give you like a /29. Basically what they're doing is routing anything of one of those addresses. That whole subnet is routed towards your router, and then you can then do what you like with those. You can NAT behind them, you can route behind them. So it's a similar concept. So we get a /48. Obviously this is much bigger than like a normal one you get from IPv4, but instead of just using these on our WAN side, these are going to be our LAN subnets, so they're all going to be within that same subnet. So when they route out, they get routed back because we're not doing any NATing with IPv6. So this is going to go onto our VLAN 10, much like we did with our IPv4 one. Just make sure advertise is checked. Okay, and then we do the next one, which would be we're going to use 20, which, like I mentioned, is not 20. But for our ease of spotting what networks are what, it's easy. Just you can see the 20 there, you know that that's going to be in VLAN 20. Okay. We've got such a big subnet to play with. I mean, we can do whatever we like really within that. That is the beauty of IPv6. There we go. So now we have our 3 global subnets, and we could use, again, we're using basically the very first host is a 0 in this instance. We could specify that as a 1 if we wanted, but it's not like we're going to we're not using DHCP to give out addresses in the same way as you do with IPv4. So it's not like we then need to increment that up as we give out the IP addresses. So I'll just show you a bit more in a minute, because we actually do the routing is based on the link local addresses. So as you'll see from my other videos, and I've mentioned this before, when we get our prefix from our ISP, I tick the add default route, and what that's doing in my IPv6 routes is it gives me this default one, but you'll see it's pointing towards the link local address of my ISP's router. It's telling me to go out of Ether 1 to my ISP. So it's routing between using link local, and you'll see that on my clients as well. So that's our network setup. Now we need to do our distribution of IP addresses. Now that's done using neighbor discovery, which is here. So that would be advertising on the bridge, but nothing's connected to the bridge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep that one there. I'm going to add one for each VLAN. So VLAN 10, untick MAC address, and just tick other configuration. Okay, we'll give out the ISP DNS servers in this example. So we apply that and then copy. And everything else I'm pretty much leaving as default. There we go. So we've now got effectively our, if you like to think of it as a DHCP server, you can, but it's obviously not because it's stateless. It's stateless address advertising. So that's how we're going to basically advertise out our addresses on our 3 networks, so our 3 VLANs. Okay, let's look on our machine first of all. Do an IP config. Check out our IP addresses. So as you can see, I've got an IPv4 one there for my VLAN 10 range. And here's my IPv6 with our 10 inserted in there. And there's our 10 there. Now, as I mentioned before, these are unique, which makes this whole IP address unique. Here's the network part, and here's the host part. Very much like your IPv4. There you go. Temporary one, this is what's used to route to certain things over the internet, web pages and things like that. This changes frequently, basically to protect yourself because unlike IPv4, where this is a private one, when you go to a website, the website sees your public IP address, not the IP address that your machine's on. Whereas here, these effectively are public IP addresses. So remote places will see this IP address otherwise. So that's why this one is a temporary changing one. But a lot of this is all going to be protected anyway by our firewall rules. So that's that one. So let's take a look at our 2 hosts, which are VLAN for our switch. So here's our switch here. So I've got 2 other Windows machines connected to 2 interfaces on here. So this is a Cisco switch, by the way, if you're unfamiliar. But I'm only showing you just to show the very basic. Just got one is on VLAN 20, which is an access port, and my other one is on port 14, which is on VLAN 30, and then I have a trunk port on port 18, which is the one that's connected to Ether 2. So very basic setup there. Now let's jump onto those hosts. So that's RDP. I'm going to RDP using one of the it's a second network card that I've got connected for just management only. This is just local only. There's no routing happening on this. It's just so I can remotely access it. So if we do a IP config on this one. Okay, as you can see, this is on the VLAN 20 range. And here we go. Here's our IP address. VLAN 20. Now this is this is Windows 10, whereas the one I showed you before was Windows 11. So we don't actually get the temporary IPv6 address with this one, interestingly enough. But as I mentioned before about the routing, as you can see, my default route is actually my link local IP address, which is the IP address of the, I'll jump back onto so remember that ends 6851. Jump back on our MikroTik, and then we look at the link local for VLAN 20, 6851. So that will be the same for here as well. So IP config 6851, but it's obviously coming in on a different interface. So now it's just a final one look at the other network. Sorry, other machine. Do an IP config here as well. There we go. 30 there, 30 there. So that we have network access, and just to show I've got internet access, just go to Google something, MikroTik. There we go. And then just to see if we use an IPv4 or 6, we can do ping google.com. There we are, so it's preferring the IPv6, but let's ping something that doesn't have IPv6 set up. So abc.com.au goes to IPv4. So that means if I try to go to abc.com.au, so it's loading there. Okay. One thing I mentioned on other videos is the when you're on the internet using that temporary. So if we look back on my Windows 10 machine, config, my temporary network is this one. So if I do my IP here, you can see that's the one it's using to access web pages. So one last thing just to show you. So IPv6 firewall. These are my basic rules that I've got set. The input ones are very similar to ones that you'd have on an IPv4 one, because the input chain is stuff attempting to access your router pretty much from the outside world. That's what we want to be blocking anyway. But we're allowing DHCP version 6 client from our ISP. We're allowing ICMP, so ping and other ICMP traffic. We're allowing all established and related, so anything that's gone out of the router will be allowed back in, and then we're going to drop everything else that's coming from there. So that's stuff destined for the router itself, but then we also need these forward rules, which we don't need with IPv4, but we're not NATing here, we're just routing, so we want to block, basically allow out our established and related, again, allow out everything that's destined for, that's going out of Ether 1, so towards the internet, and then anything that's coming back, or anything that's coming from the internet that we don't know about is going to get dropped. Okay, now we can do some forwarding blocking here if we wanted to. So we could add a rule that we could say, basically if we want to say, let's go interface. So we want to block VLAN 10, for example, talking to VLAN 20. We could then do that in here. Or we could do it based on IP ranges. So we can do that in one or two ways. We can do that as an individual range here, or as an address list. So if I add those in here, and I can show you. So create a new one, give it a name called allowed. No, sorry, not allowed, because we want it specified. So this is VLAN 10. Let me go ahead and just put in VLAN 10's range. We can basically just copy this and change these numbers to 20 and 20, and then copy it one more time for 30 and 30. Okay, so we've got these now address lists here, which we can then use in our firewall rules. So we can specify the source address list this way, rather than putting in the actual subnet into here. Or we can say, for example, we can have for some maybe management, which could say be VLAN 10, and then our users could be the VLAN 20 subnet. I'll copy that again. See, I've kept the same list the same. You can select in the drop down or type a new one. If I did type a new one, it'd create a different list, so I just want to use the same, so they're both in the same ACL, same address list. So now I've got VLAN 10 is classed as management and the other two are classed as users. So now in our firewall rule, we can add on the forward chain, so anything from users destined for management that isn't established and related. Basically, if we're accessing stuff from management, what we want it to be able to get back, we can drop. Okay, so that's basically dropping it that way around. So now, if I go ahead and make sure that rule, what is a drop rule, isn't it? So it should be okay. But I want to go above the catch all. There we are. That's obsolete. So there's my source users that are trying to access management unless it's established and related. It's going to get dropped. So what I'm going to do is turn that off first of all, just to show you it working. So we're going to go from here. We're going to actually I need to copy the whole IP address one time. It's quite big. So this is my IP address here for what I'm classing as my management because it's on the VLAN 10. So if I ping IP address, you can see it's pinging. Now let's go ahead and enable that rule. Let me go back and do that same test again. Oh, so it's no longer pinging, but let's make sure that we can ping our remote side from what we're classing as our management. Let me grab the IP address of this machine. This is on VLAN 20. And we're going to see if we can ping it from here. Ping. Which we can. So effectively from our management network, we can access our client devices, but from our client devices, we can't access management. So hopefully that's clear enough. There's a bit of VLANing in there, which again, check out the other video on VLANing for more in-depth information. And then there's the running IPv4 and IPv6 side by side, which again, I've done another video on that and a more in-depth one on setting up IPv6 for yourself. But yeah, if you've got any questions or any other configuration scenarios you'd like me to work through, then please comment below. If not, I'll say thank you for watching. Any thoughts, feedback you've got, always welcome. And if not, I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.